It is 6 p.m. and I've started the recording.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're going to be, I don't know if he's here. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by, I don't think, is Mr. Stridiron here? If not, we'll go to Mr. Howard.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Madam President, if I can ask for a moment of silence for everything that's going on in our country and our world today, and that we can just reflect and give peace of time to some serious things that are happening around us. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Howard, and thank you for that reminder. We all need that reminder. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton.
Here.
Dr. Henderson.
Here.
Mr. Howard.
Here.
Mr. Levenstein.
Here.
Ms. Maida.
Here.
Ms. Mineo.
Here.
Ms. Santiago.
Here.
Mr. Stridiron. Mr. Walker.
Here.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matter made confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, the review of programs and placements of students with disabilities, collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, NTA, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton.
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Levenstein.
Yes.
Ms. Maida.
Yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Ms. Santiago.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Thank you, and we'll see you in about an hour.
Good evening, Madam President. The recording has started back up.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'm going to turn this meeting over to our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Padilla.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, board trustees, and to our community who's joining us this evening. We have several updates. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the first one. As a standing item at every board meeting since the COVID pandemic shutdown in the spring is our Operation Reopen initiative. And so tonight I'd like to present another update on that. So there's several key updates that we're going to highlight for the Board of Ed this evening. The first one being the latest New York State Department of Health guidance. You may recall that the CDC provided updated guidance, and now the New York State Department of Health has also aligned its guidance to the CDC. So a couple key points. One is around social distancing. New York State and the CDC continues to recommend that everyone should be practicing social distancing at all time. And so that means at least 6 feet apart. As it relates to classrooms and other school-related areas, both the CDC and the New York State Department of Health has reduced that recommendation from 6 feet to 3 feet. And what the next icon to the right indicates here is that both sets of guidance has also eliminated the use of barriers. And that's a key significant difference as it relates to previous guidance. All right, so now schools are permitted to go to 3 feet without barriers. Areas where schools cannot go to 3 feet is when children are eating and or singing. And in the subsequent slides, I'm going to try my best to go over this notion of transmission rate. And I don't want to confuse anyone with the previous yellow zone status, red, status, and orange. That's different from where we are now. All right, and I'll show you that now. So as you can see to the left, you have the map of the US, and unfortunately, you could see it's pretty red and largely all of the country. And so what the CDC has indicated is that there are transmission rates for low, moderate, substantial, and high. And depending on where you are, determines the additional flexibility that schools will need in order to continue to stay open, most importantly, and what the social distancing requirements are for classroom instruction. I need to preface this entire update this evening that both sets of guidance, and right now I'm just for the remaining part of this update, I'm just going to focus on the New York State Department of Health guidance. It's clear that all schools need to prioritize their efforts to return all students to school. And I need to underscore all. Now, we've been communicating to you, and we've been communicating to our families that we are certainly working towards 5 days of instruction. But where we have a slight difference is that we're not returning all kids to school right now. I could tell you that is very much the effort for September. So to our families who have been inquiring what September will look like, I just have 2 quick points. One, we are striving to return all kids to in-person instruction in September. We have not been given any guidance as of yet as to whether or not families will continue to have the option to learn remotely starting next school year. So we're going to return all in person in September. That's the national effort right now all across the country. However, we are going to honor the decisions our families have made to remain fully remote for the rest of the year. I just needed a minute to make sure that continues to be clear. So the previous slide showed the CDC map and what constitutes a transmission rate of the individual levels that I showed you. And again, New York State is considered high per the CDC map. What you see here is the New York State map. And the CDC also, lets us know, as well as the New York State Department of Health, that the information on the New York State Department of Health map is near real-time data. So all this chart really highlights for us is that according to the New York State Department of Health map, we would be considered moderate at a 5.1% over a 7-day rolling average. So one map has us in red, one map has us in high, one map has us in moderate. Couple of testing reminders, and I think I've expressed my sentiments about testing for this year. And obviously this is not something in my control, nor is it in our Board of Education control. New York State has done what they could do to alleviate this additional pressure and stress. Nevertheless, the federal government is moving forward with their required exams. So what you see here are the required exams from the federal government, their respective timeframes. And I want to stress the last bullet in this reminder. If you are 100% virtual, not someone who has decided that today they were going to go virtual. I'm talking about families who have opted a while ago that they were going to stay fully remote. You do not have to test. If you wish to, you can have an opportunity to opt in, and you have to do that by this Thursday, April 15th, otherwise my birthday. All right, a couple of senior activities. Again, I want to commend our high school administrators for working with our seniors to make sure that they too have a memorable experience at the end of the year. And again, while it may be different, it could still be special. It could still be memorable. So we're going to continue to advertise these various senior events. What's really important here is we also received some updated guidance yesterday relating to how many people can participate in indoor events versus outdoor events. I need to get a little bit more clarification on whether or not our academy field capacity can hold over 500 people. I know it can, but can it get up to 2,500 people? And if so, that does change the amount of people that can participate at one time. If I were to give you my best guess at this point, and this is pending no other changes, I would say to you, based on the guidance that came out yesterday, we are looking at 2 graduations, and 2 graduations that will in some way reflect the traditional ceremony. All right, so more information to come out. It's still April. We still have several months before the big day. And right now, this is the latest guidance, and we've been doing a really good job that every time new information comes out, we provide it to our board and our community. Okay, pre-K is underway this week. So there are a couple of new components, such as an online registration. This is something that we've been trying to get off the ground now for a few years. So I'm excited that we're going to provide this extra flexibility to our families. So again, please go to newburghschools/registration. There's a lot of information right now on our website for families that are coming into our district brand new. We want to make sure you have a good experience, and you'll have opportunities to come both in person and complete your registration online. We actually encourage you to attempt your registration first online. Let's continue to mask up. Let's continue to do our part. Protecting yourself means you're protecting other people. Madam President, that concludes tonight's update on Operation Reopen.
Board members, questions, comments? Mr. Levinstein.
Thank you, President. I just wanted to be clear on the assessment tests. Are you saying that if someone in the beginning of the year decided to be 100% virtual, they're not required to take the tests and would have to opt in if they wanted to?
Yes, that's correct.
So how does this data help the state in making decisions. I mean, obviously it's not by the pupil, and it's may only be half the students. So I mean, it just seems like it just seems crazy. It just seems crazy.
Yeah, and I want to try not to get Miss Maida upset about this because she has expressed some serious concerns, and I agree with her. I'm not going to make pretend I understand the rationale here. This is one of those things where you're mandated to do something, even if you don't want to do it. But again, I just want to be crystal clear. If you are fully remote, you're not required to take the exam. You can if you want to, and we're giving families the option to do so by opting in.
Thank you.
Yep.
I see no other hands, Dr. Badia, and let me see if I can see Mr. Walker. No? Okay, I think we're okay.
All right. I should also note there's going to be more information coming out relating to the social distancing of 3 feet in the classroom. We're going to continue to get input, and we'll make sure at the next board meeting we provide the board an update with that information. The next presentation is a budget presentation, and I'm going to share my screen for that. So just give me a second. Okay, I just want to publicly acknowledge our CFO, Dr. Spindler. I want to acknowledge my team for their consistent focus, pushing each other, asking the tough questions, listening to our Board of Ed members, our board chairs at the various Board of Ed committees, as well as here every time we've had a public session on the budget. The goal here is to put together the best budget we can year after year. And this is something we should be proud of because each year we are pushed by our board, we're supported by our board, ultimately to come out with the best budget to present to our community. I want to preface tonight's presentation by just highlighting a number of things. Tonight will be the last set of recommendations that my team and I will make to the board. It is our hope at the next board meeting next Tuesday that we present a resolution for the board's consideration to adopt. So everything we're going to get into tonight is an effort to get us to next week's board meeting where the board will have a resolution to determine how they want to proceed. So as you know, right now, New York State did finalize the state budget. And so just a couple of quick points on the enacted budget. We're really excited that the funding, the foundation formula is back on the table to be fully funded. And so right now the thought is, at least what's being written about, is that the formula will be fully funded in 3 years at a minimum of 2% each of the subsequent years. And we're hoping that happens. But we also know history tells us that this has been shared before and has not come to fruition. Now, those of you who know me well, you know I'm not a very cynical person. I'm very optimistic. And so I do applaud our local legislators for their fight and their advocacy on behalf of the children of our school district to make sure we were in a position where we could receive additional aid. And you're going to see how that has impacted some of the decisions for next year's budget. So in the amount of $1.4 billion added to foundation aid all across the state, and that is great news. $100 million for additional pre-K seats. Our pre-K numbers are down. So I need you guys to understand that while on paper, we are supposed to get a certain amount of money, it's based on enrollment. So we have to keep an eye on what the funding allocation is going to be to Newburgh over the next year, given that our numbers are down. We're very excited that ultimately there was a rejection of the governor's proposal to collapse all of the expense-based aids into one category. That did not serve us well. We were standing to lose over $1 million if that was approved. And then you've heard us talk about this quite a few times, but we were very concerned that the spring shutdown would ultimately penalize school districts for their transportation costs. And so we did get some relief. We're expecting to get some relief, but not all. And certainly we'll take anything we can get. So right now, what we see as the impact on our school district is that we can go ahead and plan accordingly based on our expenses and knowing what we're going to get back in aid, right? That's really important to a district like us. We're one of a few districts in the state considered a fully comprehensive school district. We're a non-component district of BOCES, so we get a certain amount back in aid that's different from other school districts. Again, we're going to get some standby cost relief. So if you guys remember in the spring, when schools were shut down 2 weeks at a time, right? We can only make decisions 2 weeks at a time in the spring. And just think about how hard that was to plan, knowing that you were only going 2 weeks at a time. Well, there was certainly a transportation impact that we were taking on. Again, if fully funded, this can offset some of our escalating expenses that we know we will see in subsequent years. And we ultimately made the decision, and we do appreciate the fact that the board was willing to go with a 1% tax levy. But given the additional aid, probably for the last year that we can do this, we are going to recommend a 0 tax levy for next year's budget. So what does that mean, budget to budget and the tax levy? As I just indicated, we are recommending a 0% for the 6th year in a row. And I got to believe that's got to be some kind of record. And then a little over a 2% budget to budget, which again is pretty remarkable given all of the changes that have taken place and given the amount of gap that we have when we first started this budget cycle. So the fact that we could get this down to a 2% budget to budget, I think speaks volumes for itself.
All right, our projected revenue for next fiscal year is $293,207,684, sorry, and our projected expenditures is the same. So we are proud to present the Board of Education a 0 budget gap as of today. So we take a lot of time and a lot of effort and working behind the scenes in order to present that to you. Budget to budget, as Dr. Padilla explained, is a 2.01% for $5.7 million increase budget to budget. Recommended FTEs. So in the left column in light yellow, we're recommending over $2.2 million of filling current vacant positions. And with the stimulus money, we intend to fill an additional $1.7 million in positions. Although we are not filling 2.9 million positions that are in the 3rd column. So a total of positions that we will be filling for next school year is over $4 million in positions.
And I just want to take a quick minute because we have been listening to Board of Ed members really pushing us to reconsider some of our decisions. This middle column, you can see, was not in play for almost $1.8 million. And the fact that this is happening, one, is the result of board members really pushing to get more individuals hired positions. And this is possible because of that push, but also because of the money. And so I hope the board can see, I hope our community can see how we are responding to the requests, responding to the needs and the demands of our community.
As of April 12th, approximately 11 a.m., we received notification from New York State that unlike our CARES money, which is the first stimulus money that we received, we would have to record and report the new funding as a special aid fund. And what that means to us as a district is that we cannot put that or present that to you for our general operating budget. It would require us to fill out an application to let the government know how we intend to spend that money. the only information that we have on that thus far is that at least 20% of the money has to go to learning loss, extended year programs, after school programs. Really, how are we going to utilize this money to give the scholars what they need based on what they lost during COVID? We are still waiting some more information. Similar to our title funding, we are required to have supplemental resources and programming for our students and not supplant. So we can't take this funding and put it and utilize it for something of our current program. So that's a big requirement of us. And we look forward to on April 30th, the release of the application so that we can apply and receive and maximize the stimulus money that is allotted to the Newburgh School District.
So certainly this year and last year have been filled with enormous challenges, but so will the future. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's how we position ourselves to navigate the challenges of the future. So it's kind of good right now that school districts are getting additional funding, but can that be sustained? And we talked to you a few weeks ago about preparing for a fiscal cliff. So if the foundation aid can be fully funded, that's promising. That's going to certainly help us 2-3 years down the road. Obviously, we got to manage our reserves and make sure they continue to be healthy, make sure we're in a position where we can maximize credit ratings, maximize our ability to borrow at low interest. So that way we continue to put ourselves in a real strong fiscal position. How we use and or create reserves is going to be very important in the future for how we can navigate particular challenges that come our way. And the one thing that we've been trying to be very clear about is that this is one-time revenue. We're going to get it. It's one shot. And what we prioritize with this one-time revenue is going to impact us in the future. So it's just something that we're going to have to continue to monitor. We certainly will present plans to the Board of Ed as we devise them and begin any form of implementation, so that way you can see how the money is being allocated. And again, our priority and our focus will be on the kinds of things that we know that once the money runs out, we're not left holding the bag. So a couple key budget takeaways. So this should be a slide that looks somewhat familiar, and we continue to update it as we get more financial information. But right off the top, again, during the pandemic, no layoffs. 4 million plus in vacant positions that we expect to fill. That's really significant. Over $4 million worth of vacant positions. No reductions in SEL, cleaners, or maintenance. And that's something that we heard from the Board of Ed in recent meetings. Again, as Dr. Spindler indicated, federal stimulus has to be put in its proper place, can't be used to supplement, all right? We have to be clear on that and make sure our plans don't intermingle. No appropriated fund balance, 0 tax levy for 6 years. And every time we come out of a meeting with the board, we go right back to work to make sure we can present back to you a balanced budget. And we're doing that yet again. So that brings us to today. And today is the last set of recommendations. We do have next Tuesday where we will be formally presenting a resolution to adopt the budget. In the event the board does not adopt the budget on Tuesday, we do have other days that particular week where we can continue to tease this out and then ultimately get to an adoption. Madam President, that concludes our presentation for this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Howard, I see your hand.
Yes, are you taking responses now?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Madam President, I'd really like to let Dr. Padilla know, really appreciate the work that was put into the preparation of this 21-22 budget by you and your central office team. This has been such a complex year, but it's clear that your team remains focused. But what I'm so appreciative of is that there was no recommendations were made to lay off any of the committed personnel. And I like even more that you are filling some of the vacancies that has been priority for me. It's been really priority that we fill some of these vacancies, and I give you kudos for that. I also understand that with every budget, tough decisions need to be made. And I'm so happy that the federal and state governments have come through financially, although it's confusing what we can do with that money. But I really would like it if some assurances can be made going forward that once the appropriations of the federal funds is fully figured out, that we make a commitment to continue to analyze our needs and identify what resources would be needed to further support our buildings, our teachers, our CSEA staff, and most importantly, our scholars. You're also aware that New York State Board of Regents and the State Education Department has recently put out a call to action in regards to all districts in New York State with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would really appreciate it if we will make a commitment to be at the forefront of that call to action and lead the way. Once again, congratulations on such a good process with this budget. And I just want to know going forward that once we figure out the monies, that we can really drill down and bring back some more of those positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you. I see Mr. Levinstein's hand.
Thank you, Madam President. And yes, thank you, Dr. Padilla and Dr. Spindler, for your work on this. And I know every day it's a U-turn in figuring out something else that needs to go on. So my questions have been, and I'm glad that you're refilling vacant positions. So in March 23rd, we got a list of vacancies not being filled, either being retired or they weren't being filled. So my question is, these 37 positions here that you're filling, did they basically come from that list, or did they come from different areas, whether it was last year what became vacant or what's in the future is becoming vacant? Do you know exactly where they came from?
Yes, we do. Dr. Spindler, do you want to talk quickly just about, where they're coming from?
Absolutely. So the vacancies are from this current year vacancies that we have and prior year vacancies. So they're positions that we have held and not abolished in the district, as well as anticipated retirements. So people have submitted their retirement notifications to us. We then intend that retirement to be a vacancy. So that's considered a vacancy until we fill it. So those will be vacant as of July 1st. So those are the two lists. So we have a retiree list and we have what's been vacant on what we say is on the books and not abolished.
But my question is are the bulk of them from the list from March 23rd? That's kind of my question.
Yes. So that list that was provided on March 23rd hasn't changed, right? So that's the same list that we're going off of. So we were able to take that same list and add additional filling of those vacancies.
About 16, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. So at this point, we don't know where the cuts are going to occur because we don't have a list of specific job titles that are not going to be filled from the vacancy list. And so is it going to happen for the next meeting or?
Can you share more? So at the last meeting, we did share positions to be filled and not filled. So it's from that list.
But now you're saying you're going to fill $4 million of vacant positions. So as a board member and as a community, we need to know which positions are expected to be cut in this budget. It's absolutely vital to know this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when are we going to receive that list?
Dr. Spindler, do you want to share your screen? And again, we did share the list last week, so it's a combination of that list.
But you should have an updated list at this point, shouldn't you?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm trying to get to the right. Okay. All right, so here, over here on the left-hand side, sorry, this is my working document of the vacancy list. These positions here are the ones that are going to be filled with the COVID stimulus increase, which include 3 elementary, a typist, a communication strategist, a custodian, a director of exceptional learners, chief equity officer, a human resource personal assistant, a maintenance worker, a principal account clerk, a psychologist, 2 additional secondary teachers, ELA and mathematics, a social worker, and a teacher aide for attendance. And this was based on the feedback that we received from the Board of Education at our last meeting. These are positions here in the light yellow that are currently going to be retired positions that we intend on filling, which is a nurse teacher, a library media specialist, a home economics teacher, an art teacher, another art teacher. Oops, sorry, I'm not supposed to have teachers' names here. Like I said, this is a working draft. This is a social studies teacher at the secondary level. Believe that we've already approved their retirement. So 2 LOTE teachers, a cosmetology teacher, 2 teacher aides for special education, a nurse teacher, a physical therapist assistant, 2 additional psychologists, 2 additional social workers, a supervisor for special education, an ESL teacher, a bilingual teacher, 2 additional Spanish teachers at the middle level, a bilingual teacher at the high school level, an 8th grade science teacher, a speech teacher, an elementary Spanish teacher for our IB program, and a teaching assistant, 3 cleaners, and a custodian. The positions that we will not be filling: an assistant principal, a director of grants, 5 elementary teachers, a librarian, 3 monitors, a nurse practitioner. That was because one of our private schools closed, 2 phys ed teachers, physical therapist assistant, a principal account clerk, confidential managerial, a principal typist, secondary social studies teacher, a teacher aide, special aide. I'm sorry, for the health office, a teacher aide for special ed, that's 16, a teaching assistant 3, teaching assistant for special education 5, 6 TOSAs, which means the teachers on special assignment, a tech teacher 0.6, and a typist, 2 of them. Want you to know here in these not filling positions, there's no one currently sitting in these positions that we're not filling. These are the positions that I spoke about that were not abolished, and they were sitting as open positions in our budget.
Mr. Stradern, your hand is still up. Do you have more questions?
Yeah, it's just a follow-up. This is the type of list that I was expecting for the meeting. So this is good to have. So basically the 16 teaching aid special ed, we still don't know the need for the next year because the things are still occurring as far as assigning special ed students, determining whether or not they have special ed needs. So I would definitely be against cutting 16 of those positions. Same for the library. I don't think sharing a librarian between buildings is effective. And the principal typist position, I have a question about that. Do you know what building that's coming from? And for years, I've been saying that the typists, they're overloaded. And every year it's okay, this person's going to have like 3 people that they have to do the typing for and all the work. At some point, there's a breaking point. Is this position going to be in a school building, or is it, where is it located?
If I could speak, I'm sorry, I don't have the option to raise my hand. May I speak, Madam President? Okay, so let me take your first question in regards to the teacher aide, special aid. So all of the students who currently have an aide assigned to them will, we have accounted for them. There may be an opportunity where the IEP may state that that student no longer needs that aide, and we can reassign that aide to a student who maybe their IEP now states that they need it. There are additional vacancies built in for our teacher aide special education that we have, anticipating that students in their new CSE meetings may require it. So we do have a couple of vacancies still, that we intend on filling in regards to teacher aide special education. We have special ed teacher aides right now in our district that we kept employed that don't have the students that we were able to distribute and repurpose in the district. So they're sitting there waiting to have a student to service. In regards to your principal typist, confidential managerial, that was in the superintendent's office.
Just another quick point. I mean, there are also students who graduate. And so those aides will get repurposed. So we shouldn't just keep 16 on the books just to keep 16 when we have current people who don't have people assigned to them and we have students graduating.
No, I understand that point. 16 is a very large number. I don't know what the total number is in the district, but to reduce by 16, and then if you do need, say, 6 in the middle of, not in the middle, but starting in September, where is that money going to come from?
Yeah, we just explained it to you. There are current vacant TAs. There are students who are graduating, and we still have the flexibility to repurpose. Again, we wouldn't cut 16 TAs just to cut them. We're saying to you that we don't need those 16 right now.
All right.
And Mr. Stridiron, if you remember, since the very first year that we were on the board together, every September they come back and say that they need a few extra teacher assistants because the changes that have taken place on IEPs, new students with needs or whatever, and the money is somehow there juggled within.
I understand that, but some of the justification was, oh, these teacher aides are sitting around doing nothing because there's no students. Well, we had COVID. We didn't have students in the buildings. So to compare this year with last year it's not gonna fly. So this whole year has been a abnormal situation. I don't want to get into September and where everyone's going to be back in the buildings, and all of a sudden it's going to be, we don't have this person, we don't have this person, we're going to need to do this. And I just want to make sure we have the people that we need.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to call on Mr. Levenstein.
Thank you, Madam President. So I agree with Mr. Stridiron that this is a year that should never have been, but we're stuck with what we have. I also just want to be clear. Mr. Stridiron keeps saying that there's cuts, but we're told that this is positions that were vacant. We didn't have anybody in there. We're not eliminating that position in case there's a need. So it's not, to me, that's not a cut if we didn't have anyone there for the last year in that position. So that's one thing. I want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. And also, I don't know, Dr. Spindler, if you said we were actually one of two of the refilling of the vacant positions were, I thought you said teacher aides. I don't know if you said teaching assistants or teacher aides. Though you said teacher aides, that there were 2 special ed teacher aides in the refilled positions.
Correct.
Thank you.
Dr. Padilla, in our meeting prior to this one, which was the finance committee, they talked about that rating that we have. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our reserves get analyzed for a range of different reasons. And so we recently got some good news based on our Moody's rating for this upcoming year as we are, looking to sell bonds. So, I want to just acknowledge Dr. Spindler and her team for all their work preparing, interviewing, documenting, etc. Our fiscal position that led us to a good Moody's rating that ultimately will put the district in a strong financial position in the future. The reason for that was because we had good reserves. And as you guys know, for those of you who have been on the board now for a number of years, that has been very intentional work over the last 7 years to put our reserves in a really healthy position. They're in a good position. We're looking to make them even stronger so that way we can continue to improve our fiscal position. And in the event in the future, as we were ready to do this year, close to $4 million we were going to appropriate because we were, no one knew that this extra money was going to come to us. And that's the reason why you would have your reserves in the future. If we ever cross that bridge and have to use it, then we'll be in a very strong position where we can.
Thank you. Mr. Stridiron, I'm sorry, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. Going back to what Mr. Levinstein said, yes, I understand the positions are vacant, but it's a reason why they're vacant, because people are retiring. Every year, say you have between 40 and 50 people retiring. So if the logic is, oh, these positions are vacant, there's nobody getting laid off, so you cut 40 to 50 positions, and then the next year 40 to 50 people retire. Oh, we'll cut 40 to 50 positions. It's not layoffs. Who's left to do the work? You got to look at the big picture. You can't just cut positions because they're vacant. You have to cut positions because they're not needed. That's the point. You have to find the needs. I mean, this is a very serious needs district. And if you're cutting positions just because they're vacant, that's not the good reason to cut positions. And every year it's, oh, we're not cutting, we're not laying anybody off. Is that your worry, to lay people off? Because it's not the worry. It's to make sure that the students have what they need to succeed. So does this budget put the students and the staff in the best position to succeed? And if you say yes, then this budget is the way it should be. If we agree with that, that's what I'm looking for in a budget.
Yeah, and I can certainly understand your question and appreciate where you're coming from. So I think it ties back to something we shared with the board several weeks ago. And I think when you look over the last several years, we haven't just reduced positions based on who's retiring. In fact, there were a number of years where we increased a lot of staff, right? There are going to be times in a given year where we do increase a lot of staff. And there are going to be times like now where we have to not fill a lot of positions. And again, this is the fiscal position of the district today and how we can maintain stability fiscally 3 years from now, right? So we have to look at both at the same time. And yes, what we are saying to you, based on our analysis, based on our enrollment, that what we have done very well is as our enrollment has gone up, we have increased positions. As the enrollment has gone down, you should decrease positions as well. And that's kind of where we are right now. Our enrollment's down. We have significant financial obligations from one budget to the next. In order to close, we take the very sensitive position of trying not to lay anyone off. Now, that my understanding is that is a preferred step from our board. I mean, I've yet to hear someone say, hey, keep those positions, even though they're vacant, but lay off these other positions. And certainly, I don't think we want to lay off people during a pandemic. What we're saying is, based on our analysis and our many months of doing this work, we are putting the best program we can put together that is fiscally sound for the upcoming school year. And that we can say to you.
Board members, does anybody else have questions or comments? Mr. Stridiron, oh, Mr. Walker, I see your hand.
Yes, just two questions. The first, because I don't know, what is the role of an equity officer?
Yeah, Mr. Walker, that was a position that we had up until this year. And so, that's a position that, based on the stimulus money, and I think Mr. Howard might have touched on this as well, the Board of Regents just came out with a very important document challenging all districts and requiring all districts to get really serious about diversity, equity, and inclusivity. And I want to agree with something that he said, and that was, if I heard him correctly, I think he said something to the effect of, let's not just answer the call, but actually let's lead it. And part of that means you need the resources. And this person would oversee the culturally responsive learning work that the district is engaged in, restorative circles, disproportionality, really addressing the equity gaps that we have in our district. And I honestly, I don't think one position is even enough. I don't think it might kind of speak to Mr. Howard's point of leading the way, but I think it's a first start. I would love to really put a bigger team together at some point, but I don't know if tonight's the right time to actually do that.
Go ahead, Mr. Walker, continue.
Yeah, Doctor, I'm really sorry, but my computer became unstable as soon as you started to tell me what the role is. So in 10 seconds or so, can you just repeat it? I didn't hear it at all.
Yeah, so it's a position that we used to have that we went down this past year. I'm recommending that we go back up that position to help lead the district, answer the New York State Board of Regents call to action around equity, diversity, and inclusivity, focusing on the culturally responsive work, diversifying our workforce, addressing disproportionality. It's a big task for one person. I recognize we probably need more people to do this work. But again, I think those are requests and the analysis work we can do down the road.
My second question was, correct me if I'm mistaken, but was the position that would oversee grants, that has been cut, right? There's no longer a director?
We do. We currently have a director of grants. This was an additional one.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Stradorian, I'm going to call on you. I'm going to ask you to be brief.
That's no problem. The statement that Dr. Padilla said, when our enrollment goes up, we increase the staff, but when enrollment goes down, we would cut staff. I disagree with the cutting because I think the purpose of having a larger staff is to decrease the class size. When we can, we should make all efforts to decrease the class size because it has been shown time and time again that the smaller the class size, the better the education is for the students, and the easier it is for the teachers. So I would like to keep the class sizes small and focus our attention on cutting areas outside the classroom in future years. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question because I saw two phys ed positions, and as a former principal, I know those positions are not only good for the health of our and welfare of our students, but also provide prep time for our teachers. So are we able to cover, all of those things by reducing 2 phys ed staff people?
Ms. Moriarty or Mr. Bear?
I can answer that. We did a master schedule analysis. We looked across all of our buildings and we looked at physical education. And we are confident that we can maintain good class sizes with the 2 reductions.
Okay, I know how that works, and sometimes the numbers don't jive with what is real. So I think, that may need to a look-see. Board members, any other questions or comments on the budget? Thank you, Dr. Padilla.
Yeah, thank you all again. I really appreciate the comments and the questions and the push. Again, just to kind of, before we move on to 2.3, just to let the community know, let the board know again, kind of the next steps. My team and I will continue to work through to make sure we are prepared to release the final recommended budget this Friday. We have a board meeting next Tuesday, so a board agenda will be sent out to the community on Friday, and on there will be a resolution for adoption. We're going to move on to 2.3. This is exciting news. And we're going to ask our extraordinaire Director of Fine and Performing Arts, Ms. Quiche, if you could please do the honors.
Of course. Thank you so much, Dr. Padilla. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for including me. This is definitely exciting news, which is what we all need. So for the 4th year in a row, and even in a global pandemic, we have been awarded a National Association for Music Merchants Best Community for Music Education. So very exciting. For those of you that don't know, Best Communities for Music Education designation is awarded to districts that demonstrate outstanding achievement in efforts to provide music access and education to all students. And this award recognizes that Newburgh is leading the way. It's so fun that that's in that you guys just said that earlier. Leading the way with learning opportunities as outlined in the Every Student Succeeds Act. So this award obviously recognizes the tremendous efforts, great shout out of our highly qualified music teachers at every level, and the continued commitment to exceptional music education for all of our fine and performing arts scholars. And Newburgh, of course, we're known for nurturing, empowering, collaborative, student-centered diversity. And nowhere is that more evident than in the many educational opportunities in our department, as we continue inspiring lifelong learners, consumers, and participators in the arts. We hope you enjoyed the student work that was shown in the Superintendent Celebration of the Arts video. We've got a number of upcoming presentations in music, dance, drama, and art to end the school year. And we are just thrilled that we received this designation again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Keach, and thank you, Music Department is really great. Thank you.
Okay, Madam President, that concludes my items for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Padilla. We're going to move on. Public comments on agenda items. Mr. McCoy.
There was no public comment submitted today, Madam President.
Thank you, sir. We're going to move on to our board committees. Curriculum and instruction, Mrs. Maida.
Thank you, Madam President. Our meeting was on April 7th, and we discussed several resolutions which are on the agenda tonight. One including an award of $10,000 for BlackRock, a continuation of our Infinite Campus subscription, a new textbook adoption for our new AP Geography course. Ms. Green gave us a wonderful presentation explaining the process of selection of the textbook. We did several updates, including talked again about testing. And of course, Mr. Bayer and Ms. Moriarty are working diligently on planning summer programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Maida. Exceptional Learners Committee, Mrs. Burton.
Thank you, Madam President. Exceptional Learners, we met on April 7th, 2021. We had Mr. Regan, who presented an overview of SEL programs district-wide in elementary, middle, and high schools. The commonalities included, not limited, but included character education, emotional intelligence, and emotional regulation. This year, we are using Panorama, which is an organization focused on baseline data by asking students directly how they are feeling in various emotional competencies. And what this is allowing is for us to know if these programs, these SEL programs, are impactful and that they inform the district of the direction in terms of aligning our SEL district-wide. And the goal for that is so that we have one focus and a common language to measure our SEL impact. Item number 2, we received an update on my brother's keepers and also my sister's keepers, which includes a virtual summit that will be held on May 12th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. And also they're in the process of planning and recruiting for a MBK and MSK for the MBA and MSK scholars to participate in a Saturday Academy, which will include leadership development and college and career exploration. And lastly, we heard testimony from students and PPS staff to acknowledge school counselors, social workers during National School Counselor Week and National School Social Workers Week, Social Work Week. And so I want to thank our PPS staff, including but not limited to our school counselors, our social workers, and our school psychologists, and of the entire PP staff for all they do to support our scholars, for how they reach out, advocate, and provide intensive services and interventions, and for their being on top of our students to get them engaged in school. They are the ones on the front lines who support our scholars through many challenges in general, but most specifically, they've been on the front line during this pandemic time. So we truly thank all of our PPS staff and appreciate their commitment and passion. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our library committee. Mr. Stern.
Thank you, Madam President. Library Committee met on April 8th, and the director's report outlined many of the items, the presentations and occurrences in the library in March, and all the exciting things that happened in April that are coming up, and the library's role in the giving opportunities and information to the community for vaccinations. And there are two items on the agenda tonight for up for vote, the budget and the annual report. At least that was voted on for upcoming meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stradarns. We're going to move on to Audit and Finance Committee. Mrs. Santiago.
Thank you, Madam President. Our Audit and Finance Committee meeting, we met at 5 o'clock today, just before tonight's meeting. So most of the items are tonight's finance section. In addition to the items there, we also talked about the food service budget. We talked about, as you mentioned before, Moody's rating. Dr. Spindler shared that our rating is a AA3. So kudos to all of them. And that pretty much sums everything up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Santiago. We're going to add to the agenda. So we're going to add something from Mr. Forget. So this is our Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Forget.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like consideration to add an item to the agenda.
I'd like to have a motion to add to the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Roll call to add.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson, Mr. Howard,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Madam President, I request consideration for the adoption of the 21-22 academic calendar.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So move.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Stridiron has his hand
Mr.
up.
Stridiron. has a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry. Sorry, Darren. I'm sorry, Mr. Stridiron. Go ahead.
It's okay. So can someone just outline the changes from the previous calendar? Thank you.
Sure. I'm sorry, Mr. Stridiron. That we are presenting the original calendar we posted at the last meeting.
So we're not going to have the take into consideration the 2 days in, let's see, the September 8th as a Jewish holiday?
The second day, we are not going to consider that as a holiday on the calendar, but we will honor individuals that participate in those events through a personal holiday, or if it's a student, approving an excused absence as per our policy.
Mr. Strinard, I can talk to you later on about something we discussed, okay?
All right.
Are there any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
No.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
No.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my item.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Secondary, Mr. Bayer.
Thank you, Madam President. Curriculum Instruction Secondary has 6 items on the consent agenda for the board's consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Yes, Mr. Stridarn.
5.2, please.
5.2, okay. Any other items to separate out? I'd like to entertain a motion on 5.1 through 5.6, but not 5.2. Can I have a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Okay. Questions or discussion on those items? Roll call on those items, sir.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
Yeah.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
Let's move on to item 5.2, please. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridarn.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't have the item in front of me, but I believe in this new contract, I thought it was 9.3, but section 9.3 of the contract, where it states that if there is a subpoena for records of Infinite Campus, that the superintendent is to be notified by the vendor. Is that a new item in our contracts with Infinite Campus, or is that something that has always been in the contracts with Infinite Campus?
Mr. Shaw, can you respond to that, please?
I can't give a complete historical background on that. So I really can't answer that question. The issue is whether or not the requirement is reasonable.
Yeah, I don't have the language here. That's why I had asked to see if there was a previous contract with Infinite Campus, and it wasn't provided. So I don't know what the other contract had.
Are there any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
No.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mr. Baer. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services, Dr. Roman.
Thank you, Madam President. Under the Student Support Services agenda, we have one item for your consideration, recommendations from the CSE CPSE Committee.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Dr. Roman. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Dr. Spindler.
Thank you, Madam President. Finance presents to you 7.1 through 7.9 as a consent agenda for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Mr. Stridiron.
7.9, please.
Any other board members like to separate out anything? I'd like to entertain a motion on items 7.1 through 7.8.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on those items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago.
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Beta.
Yes.
We're going to move on to item 7.9. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridiron.
Thank you, Madam President. So if I'm understanding this correctly, right now, I believe we have $10 million in the capital reserve fund. And now you want to add at least the potential of an additional $25 million into that fund and extend the duration of that fund for another 15 years. Now, would this increase in the funds, could that possibly be used for the restoration of the Bombville School? Or is this only to do with the capital bond?
Dr. Spindler?
So this was established in 2016, and it was established for the capital bond, as well as any repairs that the district would like to make in any buildings that may be in disarray. I know in the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting, there'll be a discussion in regards to the old building, Bombville building, as it is, it may be deemed an emergency situation and beyond repair and restoration. We're looking into that right now.
So it is possible to use the potential funds for the Bombville School, but it's not earmarked at this point for anything but capital bond?
It's earmarked for any capital projects in the district. The $10 million that is in this reserves, we expect to expend on our capital project and have utilized those funds as of June 30th, 2021.
So where are the funds that are going to be put into this extension of the capital reserve fund coming from now?
Can you repeat that? So if this was to be approved by the voters, where would we get the funds to be able to replenish this reserve?
Yes.
Okay. The same way that we replenish the reserves every year at the end of the year, in the event that there is a surplus and we allocate our money to our fund balance and our restricted reserves, this would be an opportunity to have another restricted reserve that we could replenish.
So,
Mr. Stridiron, this isn't a give and take. Just hang on. Let's see if somebody else has a question, okay? Anybody else questions? Okay, now you can continue, Mr. Stridiron.
so I'm anticipating at this point that you think, or the administration thinks, that they're going to have a surplus of money next year to put into this, or else you wouldn't be doing this. So I'm just concerned that the more taxpayers' money is not spent and the more needs students have, why are we putting the money into the students' needs? Why are we putting it into the buildings when we just had the capital bond?
Well, I mean, kind of unpack what you're saying. You're speaking in generalizations, right? This is the ability that the community can decide if they want to support children because supporting our facilities is actually supporting children for the future. So again, it's a decision that can be made at the end of every year where the board can decide if there is a surplus to allocate accordingly. And this could be another opportunity to do so.
And I know, Mr. Stridiron, that you wouldn't want any child to be in a building that's not healthful or safe. We want them to be all safe, and we want the buildings to be as healthy as possible so that learning can take place all the time. And I know that's in your best, that's what you're talking about. Dr. Spindler, you have your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. Additionally, in discussing that we already have voter approval for our project that will require us to sell bonds in order to incur debt to be able to pay for our project. And that was already voter approved. And having the reserves allows us to lessen the debt and burden to the taxpayers on any bonds as well. And again, it's money that we can incur all the way to 2041. So we're obviously not anticipating a surplus to be able to fill this $25 million in a couple of years. It would take us some time to be able to get to that amount.
Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand.
No, I understand what you're saying, Ms. Mineo. Of course, I don't want students to be in buildings that are falling apart. But that's what the capital bond was for. I mean, we're at the health and safety meeting, and you should see this video that was put out by the delegate from NFA Maine. We have windows that are literally, if you lean up against them, you'll fall out and kill yourself. So we're putting more money away for the future, but we have situations right now we need to handle. We have students that aren't getting the education that they need. And we're creating a reserve for an additional $25 million for the future. It's like, the problem is now. Let's handle it now. I don't understand. I can understand some money, but $25 million is a lot of money that the taxpayers will be giving to the district to put in a reserve fund when they could be in the taxpayers' hands to deal with their own issues too. It just, to me, it doesn't make any sense, but I'm just one of 9. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Any board members, any other comments? Well, let's vote. Go ahead, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
No.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
That concludes my items for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Spindler. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 8.1 through 8. Can't see that as small. 8.11 for your consideration on tonight.
I'm trying to unmute myself. I'm so sorry. You go to 8.11 or 8.12, Mr. McLemore?
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam President. It's small on my end. It's 8.12.
Thank you. Would anybody like to separate out any of these items? Yes, Mr. Howard.
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to pull out 8.1.
8.1. Okay. Anybody else like to pull out anything? So I'd like to entertain a motion on 8.2 to 8.12.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on those items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago.
Yes.
Let's move on to item 8.1. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Howard?
No questions.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Abstain.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn.
Yes.
Madam President, I'd like to request permission to add an item.
I'd like to entertain a motion to add an item.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Roll call to add, please.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yeah.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Be it resolved that the board hereby appoints Melinda Gordon Esquire to serve as an independent investigator, to conduct interviews, and to issue a report regarding a pending workplace harassment complaint dated April 9th, 2021, at the hourly rate of $220 for such services.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Did you get that second, Mr. Clerk?
Second.
Thank you.
Questions or discussion on this item? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Dr. Henderson. Dr. Henderson.
Oh.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton.
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. We're going to move on to the clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have two items, the regular minutes from March 23rd and the resolution to approve the election inspectors for the May 18th budget vote.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
Item 9.3 is to let you know if you're still interested in running for the board, there's still time. You are about 2 weeks and a day out from them being due. They are due April 28th by 5 o'clock. And this year's election, you need 50 signatures to get on the petition. And that there's 3 spots up this year. They're currently held by Ms. Santiago, Mr. Howard, and Ms. Burton. If you're interested, you can give me an email and I will provide more information. And that concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. The next part is public comments on non-agenda items. Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. There was no public comment submitted.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Have a